Hi, and welcome back to part 2. Now in this part of the video, we're going to focus on patterns that we find with the verb to do, and also at the end we're going to make some comparisons between make and do. So as with the first video, we're going to watch a brief presentation in order to discover the patterns that we can find with the verb to do. Here we go. So let's look at some of the patterns that go with the verb to do. And the first, and without a doubt the most important, is the idea of the task. These are things that are already mapped out for us. We don't create anything. We perform these actions. And it's very important because our day-to-day routine is littered with things that we do. We make to-do lists. And what kind of things appear on our to-do list? Well, we have to do the household chores, maybe do some exercise, do our homework, or even do the grocery shopping. Another very important idea is the idea of work. Now, it's important to remember, no matter how creative your work is, we use do regardless. And think of the question that we ask when we want to know what somebody does for a living, what somebody's job is. We say, what do you do? Now, the verb to work eliminates a lot of the need to use this collocation, but it doesn't matter. We're still going to use do as opposed to make. And the same applies to job. I have a job to do, not to make. So, look at these examples. She does the work of two men. He does a job that nobody wants to do. And we have done a lot of work together. Never make. The third idea we're going to look at is closely linked to work, and it's the idea of study. Now, this as a concept has more or less the same rules as the idea of work. It doesn't matter how creative or inventive this study is, it's still something that we do. Now, it may seem a little counterintuitive, but it doesn't matter. Even with research, it's seen as something to be solved, something to be performed. So we can do market research, do a survey, do an exam, or do a degree, or do a master's. For example, I did a degree in languages at university. We'll later see some parallels with the verb to take, but right now we're going to focus on make and do. So the next idea that we have is when we don't really have a clear idea, when we talk about unspecified activities. Now, with non-specific words like stuff or things, along with pronouns like something or anything, we use do regardless of the noun that's being replaced, even if we would usually use that noun with make. So, I'd say there's plenty to do. He did some stuff he's not proud of. It's better to do nothing. And we ought to do something about the noise. All of these words are non-specific ideas. So let's move on to the next one. And that's the idea of personal performance. Now, we saw with make that when we talk about progress, we use the verb to make. But when we speak about personal performance, we use do. Now, there's a tendency with non-native speakers to use make. He made good results, or he made a good game. However, in English, we either need to use a specific verb, or we use do plus an adverb. For example, he did very well today. They did badly in their exams. Or I did worse than I'd expected. In each case, we're talking about personal performance. Now, the next idea we're going to move on to is a physical action or movement. And again, there's a tendency to use make. It probably would even make more sense to use make. However, we don't use make. We use do. We do exercise. We can do a backflip. Well, some of us can do a backflip. We can do a mime. We can do a push-up. Right? And it doesn't matter what type of physical movement it is, we generally use do. We'll almost never use make. Now let's look at some comparisons between times we can use the same word with make or do and the differences between those instances. Alright, so let's make some comparisons. Let's compare. Sometimes we're going to use the same word but with a different verb. For example, the teacher made an exam for his students. Now, I as a teacher have to make exams for my students. I create them. I construct them. However, the students then do the exam. Okay, because it's a task laid out to them by their teacher. Next idea is one that we were speaking about earlier. If they make the application better, that's a form of improvement, a form of progress. But if he did better in his evaluation, we're talking about personal performance. It's not making the object better, and you could argue, yes, there is progress, but we're talking about his personal performance, so it's important to separate those ideas. The next idea we're going to look at is making work. Now, if you make work, it means that you're doing something so badly or inefficiently that you're creating extra work for yourself. Now, this is a huge disparity from the idea of doing work. Now, she did her work without complaining. It's the task that was laid out for her. And sometimes we can have make and do even in the same sentence. For example, he made a list, he created this list of things to do, of tasks that need to be completed or performed. So that's pretty much it for the differences between make and do for the moment. But remember, you can refer back to this section in the blog and add if you like, ask questions if you want to. Just keep the information rolling and hopefully we can add some clarity and help you distinguish between make and do. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. But remember, there are plenty more available on blarneystoneenglish.com, where you can also get in contact with me about online classes or presential classes in the Madrid area. I hope you found this useful. If you have, please share it with your friends. And remember, blarneystoneenglish.com. I hope to see you next time. Until then, bye bye.